This is the city of Manchester. In this city, 200 years ago today, thousands stood where I stand now to demand the right for their voices to be heard in Parliament. On the 16th of August, 1819, 60,000 people came to peacefully protest for democracy here in St. Peter's Field. But the protest ended in tragedy. Let's go back to 1819. About 10 million people were living in the UK, but only 2% had the right to vote. All of these voters were men, and most of them owned land. At the time, Manchester was a divided city. The rich and powerful of Great Britain loved Manchester. The city brought them unimaginable wealth and success. It was here that the world's first industrial factories had been built, where the machines were powered by water, coal and steam. But these factories relied on an even greater power, the Manchester workers, their hard work and cooperation symbolised by the Manchester Bee. These workers brought great wealth to Manchester and the factory owners, but they had very little share in it themselves. The women, men and children who worked in these Manchester factories lived lives of poverty and misery, crowded together in tiny houses. The areas they lived in were called slums. People had no clean water, no sewers and no support from their employers. Diseases spread easily and life expectancy was short. To make matters worse, many men had been sent away to fight a war with France. When they returned, they had no jobs to come home to. These experiences left working people in cities like Manchester feeling like they had no control over their lives. They wanted change, and so the workers started to campaign for a fairer political system and the right to vote. But when 60,000 gathered in a peaceful protest to ask for these rights, an order was given to attack them and send them away. In the attack, hundreds were hurt, and it is thought as many as 18 people were killed. This event sent shockwaves around the country. It became known as the Peterloo Massacre, a reference to St. Peter's Fields and the bloody Battle of Waterloo that was fought with France. Because of Peterloo, many Britons became more aware of how unfair life was for people living in industrial cities like Manchester. 13 years later, politics in the UK started to change. Manchester finally got its voice in Parliament. For the first time, Manchester had its own MP. But it would be fully 150 years before everyone aged over 18 in the UK was given the right to vote. Today, we remember those brave protesters who stood up against an unfair and unjust system to fight for the freedoms that we still have today.